You know, the COVID pandemic raises some deep questions for us. If God exists, then why does God allow a pandemic to happen? It's a serious question. It goes to the root of our faith. You know, who is God and what does God do in the world? If you're anything like me, in times like this, you go right back into your childhood thinking. You go back into a longing for a genie like God. You can rub the lamp of faith or the lamp of prayer, and this genie God will grant you your wish. It's a God you can control. I want God to take away this virus and to make everything better again. So, in other words, in times of crisis or stress, I go right back into my magical thinking of my childlike mind and its need for a very strong and safe parent. I want God to be like that. You know, unfortunately, I don't have any evidence that God is like that. You know, I was born in 1956, and as this visual shows, pandemics come and go. There was the Asian flu about the time I was born. It killed 1.1 million people. There was the Hong Kong flu in the late 60s that killed a million people. HIV/AIDS has been with us since 1981. It's not cured. 25 to 35 million people have died. There was the SARS outbreak in 2002. There was the swine flu outbreak. There was MERS and Ebola and Zika and the avian flu. And today we're dealing with COVID-19. Not only pandemics, but sufferings and tragedies of all kinds come and go. My grandparents, my parents, several of my friends have died before, in my opinion, their time. Every tragedy and sorrow raises the question, why did God let this happen? The Bible is a foundational document of our Christian faith. It's like an old family photo album. We look into it and we immediately begin to tell stories of what and who we see. Over time, we see the patterns emerge. Gee, certainly was a lot of drinking and divorces in my family tree, or positively, well, some of my ancestors did the most incredible things. How did they live that way? When we look into the Bible, we try to come to grips with questions like, why is there suffering, or why does God allow bad things to happen? We might see a bunch of snapshots from which we can visualize patterns, but actually, the Bible's not completely coherent. It's not really interested in answering those kinds of questions. Stephen Viccio is a scholar who took a deep dive into the Bible, and he came up with 6 ways that the Bible addresses suffering. Original sin, the devil, free will, divine plan, a test, moral quality. The first 3 models on this list, the original sin, the devil, the free will, one could call an ontological model. That is, suffering is just built into the cake, so to speak. And the last 3 models, the notion of a divine plan, a test, the perfection of our character, these could be called teleological models. That is, they're all about the purpose or the meaning of life itself. Now obviously this is where we need Dr. Steele to suddenly enter this video and help us out a bit, but he's not here today. Further evidence of the problem of suffering. So you're just stuck with me. All of these models make sense in certain situations, but none of them really help our heart questions. None of them really answer our ponderings. Where is God? And what is God doing in this particular moment? For example, the original sin thing falls flat. I'm a big believer in sin. I know it well, but I don't think people are born bad. I'm far more Jewish than that. The rabbis teach that each one of us are born with both a good and evil urge. Before the originating sin, there was an even greater originating blessing. The goodness of life is greater than the bent character of life. So even if the virus came out of abuses and greed and stupidity of the wet market, that still doesn't help me understand God's role in all of this. And I'm really not all that hot about the devil. Get it? Little pun there? Yeah. I'll move on. I've seen evil up close, and I do affirm the reality of spiritualities, of evil with its systemic and structural evil. And certainly I've seen how personal habits can become addictions, and addictions can take on a power that absolutely dominates and controls our life. But I don't see a planned consciousness behind all the bad and warped in the world. We simply don't need a devil to understand evil. The ontological reality of our free will, that we each have capacity to make choices, that we each have the capacity to alter our family scripts, our impoverished condition, our lousy situation, the reality of free will, although true enough, doesn't quite address my longing to know where God is and what God is doing in this pandemic. The other models, the teleological models of purpose and meaning, they all make sense in certain situations. The notion that God actually has a plan, a script, a direction through which all of history is being guided is quite comforting in times, particularly in times of crisis. But personally, I don't think there is a lot of evidence that God has a detailed and structured plan for all of history. I do believe that there is a vision to life. There is a movement in life. But the details of moving towards that vision, a commonwealth where enemies are reconciled, where economies are shared so that all survive and thrive, a way of life that honors and replenishes the earth. I think the details of that vision and how we actually implement it, that's up to us. We enact and embody that vision into reality. Far from being part of God's vision, this virus is an obstacle to what God would desire. And the notion that this virus is a test of our faith is, well, it's true enough. It certainly is testing our faith. But I don't think that God is the author of any kind of catastrophe so that we can learn to depend on God for all of our ways. I simply don't accept that God is that cruel. And although all crisis either perfects or crushes our moral character, I don't see this virus as an intentional act of God, a conscious act of God, so that we can grow up, even if growing up might be a possible result of societal meltdown. So where is God? And what is God doing in this pandemic? Earlier in the year, when Australia was trying to survive in the midst of all those hellish firestorms, I'm sure folks were asking the same questions. I'm sure that the billions of people who live each day of their life. So where is God? And what is God doing in this pandemic? Earlier in the year, when Australia was trying to survive in the midst of all those hellish firestorms, I'm sure folks were asking the same questions. I'm sure that the billions of people who live each day of their life on less than $2 a day, or families who live their whole life in refugee camps, or anyone who is in anguish over the death of a loved one, or the women and families in our own parking lot, ask these questions every day. Where are you, God? How are you helping? And as this virus continues to infect us for many more months to come, as unemployment unleashes despair and anger, as political dysfunction continues to sow confusion and animosity throughout our society, as America the beloved staggers as if hit by a wicked left hook, the question of God will continue to arise, and many false prophets will continue to arise. And by this I do mean Christian preachers, particularly media preachers, who will teach that faith will protect you, that Jesus will put a hedge around you, that God will save his people. And then when folks fall victim to the virus's hunger, those same preachers will blame the victim for his or her own lack of faith. And they'll point the finger of blame at others and teach that the unclean are the ones who are responsible, that the unclean are the cause of all this affliction, and that we need to purge the unclean from our midst so that God will bless us again. The universal question of where is God and what is God doing in this time of plague must first address the question, well, what kind of God are we even talking about? Are we talking about the genie in the lamp God who will grant all our wishes? Are we talking about the thunderbolt God, Zeus, who rains down wrath upon all of our enemies? Or the God of supernatural healing and magical thinking? Or the free market God who turns everything and everyone into a commodity so that the true believer can pick and choose their own facts, their own realities, their own self-interests above the interests of anyone else? Or do we dare to address the God whose incarnation led to a cross? Do we dare address the God who suffers? The God of creation itself, who desires to have revealed the children of God on earth as in heaven. Listen to this text from Romans. For the creation awaits with eager longing for the revealing of the children of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not of its own will, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself would be set free from the bondage to decay and will obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. We know that the whole creation has been groaning in labor pains until now. And not only the creation, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, we groan inwardly while we wait for adoption, the redemption of our bodies. We keep thinking that we're different from creation, but we are creation. We emerge from creation. We're its self-consciousness, its voice. Our destiny is bound up with creation's destiny. Our health is its health, and vice versa. But we've created a way of life that makes creation an object, as something out there, and that has made us, turned us into ruthless predators. As Romans clearly states, the creation is in labor pains, yearning for God's children to act as midwives, birthing a new creation. But we're out of harmony. We ourselves can be obstacles to God's vision. This is why I think that Kristen Flintz's poem, Coved's Letter to Humans, is so deep and so profound and so prophetic. A word from God's Spirit, a word we should listen to, a word we should wrestle with, just like Jacob wrestled the angel at the river. And just like Jacob, we ourselves might be wounded by our encounter, but the wound itself might transform us from who we are into who we can be. Stop. Just stop. It's no longer a request, it's a mandate. We will help you. We will bring the supersonic high-speed merry-go-round to a halt. We will stop the planes, the trains, the schools, the malls, the meetings, the frantic, furried rush of illusions and obligations that keep you from hearing our single and shared beating heart, the way we breathe together in unison. Our obligation is to each other, as it has always been, even though you have forgotten. We will interrupt this broadcast, the endless, cacophonous broadcast of divisions and distractions, to bring you this long breaking news. We are not well. None of us. All of us are suffering. Last year, the firestorms that scorched the lungs of the earth did not give you pause, nor the typhoons in Africa, China, Japan, nor the fevered climates in Japan and India. You have not been listening. It's hard to listen when you're so busy all the time. hustling to uphold the comforts and conveniences that scaffold your lives. But the foundation is giving way, buckling under the weight of your needs and desires. We will help you. We will bring the firestorms to your body. We will bring the fever to your body. We will bring the burning, searing, and flooding to your lungs, that you might hear, "We are not well." Despite what you might think or feel, we're not the enemy. We are messenger. We are ally. We are a balancing force. We are asking you to stop, to be still, to listen, to move beyond your individual concerns and consider the concerns of all, to be with your ignorance, to find your humility, to relinquish your thinking minds and travel deep into the mind of the heart, to look up into the sky streaked with fewer planes and see it, to notice its condition: clear, smoky, smoggy, rainy. How much do you need it to be healthy so that you may also be healthy? To look at a tree and see it, to notice its condition. How does its health contribute to the health of the sky, to the air you need to be healthy? To visit a river and see it, to notice its condition: clear, clean, murky, polluted. How much do you need it to be healthy so that you may also be healthy? How does its health contribute to the health of the tree, who contributes to the health of the sky, so that you may also be healthy? Many are afraid now. Do not demonize your fear, and also do not let it rule you. Instead, let it speak to you in your stillness. Listen for its wisdom. What might it be telling you about what is at work, at issue, at risk, beyond the threats of personal inconvenience and illness? As the health of a tree, a river, the sky tells you about the quality of your own health. What might the quality of your own health tell you about the health of the rivers, the trees, the sky, and all of us who share this planet with you? Stop. Notice if you're resisting. Notice what you're resisting. Ask why. Stop. Just stop. Be still. Listen. Ask us what we might teach you about illness and healing, about what might be required so that all may be well. We will help you if you listen. All throughout the planet, air pollution has dropped noticeably. The earth is rejoicing in its unexpected Sabbath. Being sheltered in place has caused us to see anew our relationships. Who really cares about us? And who do we really care about? It's created an entirely new political conversation. We're beginning to see our relationships with the earth and each other in a new way. Suddenly there are resources to house the homeless, to boost our medical infrastructure, to assist business so as to assist employment. People are beginning to ask new questions about building a commonwealth, about how to be a good neighbor, about solidarity instead of dog eat dog. A pit bull from earth has growled and bitten, and we're in a moment of actually paying attention. So where is God? And what is God doing in this time of pandemic? Author Rebecca Solnit gives us this analogy. She says, when a caterpillar enters its chrysalis, it dissolves itself, quite literally, into liquid. In this state, what was a caterpillar and will be a butterfly is neither one nor the other. It's a sort of living soup. Within this living soup are the imaginal cells that will catalyze its transformation into winged maturity. That's where God is. God is in the soup, the chrysalis. And what God is doing is inspiring us from the inside out to move towards the vision of an ecological, holistic, new creation, new economy, new politics, new relationships, new citizenry, new and deeper faith that God cares about all of creation, has sympathetic compassion for all of creation, and is yearning for a people to emerge that are focused and inspired by the mutuality of existence, the interdependence of humanity with our habitat. God is in the soup, leading us to change towards greater inclusivity and greater sharing of creational commonwealth. There are many, like Caesar and the temple elite in Jesus' day, who will resist this change. They want us to stay caterpillars. They want to use this time of crisis as an opportunity to seize even more power and control for themselves. That's that structural evil I was talking about. But like the early church before us, a counterculture who lived in such a way that the poor heard good news, the sick were healed, the blind given new sight and a new way of life, a generosity, a joy, justice, like a gorgeous butterfly leapt into history. May we become the imaginal cells that function as a chrysalis, transforming what has been into what can be, a new harmony between creator and creation. God is in the soup, where the caterpillar gives up its life only to be born with wings, death and resurrection. Again, using Solnit's words, may the best among us, the most visionary, the most inclusive, be the imaginal cells. For now, we're all in the soup. The outcome of disasters is not foreordained. It's a conflict, one that takes place while things that were frozen and solid and locked up have become open and fluid, full of both the best and worst possibilities. We are in a state of profound change. But this is also a time of depth for those spending more time at home and more time alone, looking outward at this unanticipated world. There is meaning as well as pain and sadness and mourning and grief, the emotions born of empathy and solidarity. If you're sad and frightened, it's a sign that you care, that you're connected in spirit. And if you're overwhelmed, well, it is overwhelming. But as our biblical family photo album attests to again and again, the old is passing away. Behold, I am making all things new. May it be so.